2 weeks ago, I asked if you'd like me to talk more about survival. There was an overwhelming response that you wanted to hear what I have to say about urban survival, noting what lays ahead. If you don't like the sound of truth, logic, reason, or reality, I suggest you click off right now. However, if you want to learn something that could and will likely save your life, stick around. Welcome back to the channel, where as always a free and easy way of supporting this work is by simply hitting that like button, subscribing if you're new, ensuring you also knock that notification bell so you never miss a new episode. Also watch out for the bots in the comments below. I'll never ever ask you to contact me via Telegram or WhatsApp. They are scammers. Please stay away. Okie dokie, let's get into it. Noting I was going to do one video on this, as a good instructor I did a lesson plan and I thought there is no way I can teach you survival in one lesson. So I broke it down into 5 videos. And the first video is essentially the rules of survival. I was going to go straight into an acronym just to tell you how to survive, but then I thought, no, we need to actually pan out a little bit, look at the big picture, and I'm going to tell you the rules of survival. Many of you have been sheltered from these rules. Luckily, you're very fortunate, you're very privileged. No, I'm not talking about that crazy privilege that one side would like to talk about. I'm talking about all of us in a modern world compared to how survival was hundreds or thousands of years ago. Again, some of the things I'm going to talk about are going to be very confronting because I'm not going to sugarcoat this. When it comes to survival, there is no room for sugarcoating these types of topics. It is what it is, deal with it. Again, if you don't want to hear about truth, logic, reason, or reality, click off now and go back to your bubble. I mean that with as much respect as I can possibly offer in these types of situations. That is, things are changing around the world, and when it comes to survival, no one cares about what's happened in the modern, luxurious, privileged world that we all enjoy. Survival takes on a whole new form when the poo hits the fan. Noting this is an urban survival series, this isn't me talking to you about what to do out bush. That is a whole different lesson with a whole lot of different things to consider. Nonetheless, the rules actually apply in the same way. These are the 8 rules of survival. Now, I mentioned there's going to be a series. This video is the rules of survival. Then I'm going to go into protection, location, water, and food. I'm going to break them down with detail. And if you want to cut straight to the chase, that is the order of survival. Protection, location, water, food. Most people go the other way and think about their stomach. Food is the last thing you need to worry about, but we'll talk about that in future videos. For now, we're going to get into the rules of survival. And the first rule is to do what's hard when it's easy. So many of the luxuries that we enjoy today, we absolutely take for granted. When I was a soldier, when I came back from bush or field or desert ops or training, some of the most simplest things is what I enjoyed the most. Turning on a tap, running water. You cannot imagine the luxury of running water. Light, flicking a switch and light comes on. A seat, a bed, hygiene, and of course, fire. Now, in the modern world, we don't really think about fire because we've got electricity, but in survival, fire is crucial. It's not just about light and heat, it's also about the purification of water. So some of the things that you can do so easily now, like buying a packet of lighters, it took mankind arguably centuries, if not millennia, to figure out how to make fire. Yet now we have the technology to strike a match, or flick a flint wheel, or even press a button and fire magically appears. When you think about what you can do now that is easy compared to what will be hard later, next time you're down the shop, think how easy it is to buy a lighter, how easy it is to buy batteries, how easy it is to buy personal hygiene products, how easy it is to get water. All the things that are so easy now because they're in abundance. Consider that in a survival situation, those things that are so easy today are catastrophically difficult tomorrow. So rule 1 in survival is to do what's hard when it's easy. And those things that are easy are in fact right now. Moving on to rule 2, as these are in order, you need to consider that failing to plan is planning to fail. So the sheer fact that you're watching this video now shows that you're actually starting to get a paradigm of, you know what, maybe I should set a plan. Now, it could be like in the olden days when power went out, where are the candles? Where are the matches? If you're thirsty, where do I get water? If you need to move in haste, whether it's a bushfire, a cyclone, a flood, where are you going to move and how are you going to move? These simple little plans that you make today, sometimes they're as simple as having a discussion with your family and your friends or emergency services. It's so easy to do those now, and by failing to do it now, you're in fact planning to fail. Some of you out there said you don't want to hear anything about survival. Look, primarily this is an economics, money, finance and lifestyle channel. I have to respect that. But the majority of you are starting to see the big picture, and you understand, you know what? I need to get a plan. Beyond buying stores or having heating and cooling, you must think about mobility. In a survival situation, the luxury of sitting still in a castle or a fortress is truly that, a luxury. True survival depends on mobility, of which we'll talk about a bit later. But just as you plan for your stores, you need to plan for your relocation. And if you think I'll just call someone when it all goes down, well, guess what? Communication lines go down as well. So I certainly have CB radios, established comms with my network, established plans with my family and friends. So when something goes down, even if I can't talk to them, we've already planned our move. Which brings us to rule 3. Rule 3, alliances dominate. In survival, doing it alone is immensely difficult. Not impossible if you know what you're doing and you're fit and you're strong and you're equipped, but it becomes so much easier when doing it in an alliance. Friends, family, community, humankind has showed us this. One of the greatest punishments we did to members of the community in the past was ostracize them, either socially or physically. Push them out of the community, push them out of the village, because they're almost destined to die. Some of my mates want me to play paintball with them, and they say, well, you're a soldier, you must be really good at it. The truth is, unless those around me have been trained, it's useless. Because sure, I know my fire and movement, I know my cam and concealment, I know how to look for cover, I know the theory of counter ambush and flanking moves, enfilade fire, covering fire, and so forth. But if those around me don't know it, I'm on my own. When it comes to survival, it's the same thing. The more people in my village or survival pack per se, the more chances I have of not only surviving, but thriving. Operating as a team or in a community has a multiplying effect greater than the number itself. That is, if I'm by myself, I'm worth one operator. But if I'm with someone else who knows what they're doing, I'm not actually doubling my effort. I'm in fact tripling it. And if I've got 3 or 4 people in my alliance, especially if they know what they're doing and they're capable, those 3 or 4 have a multiplying effect of in fact 5 or 6 and so on. My point is, if you try to do this alone, it's going to be much harder. And I warned you at the beginning of this video, some of the things I'm going to say are confronting, and now we start to move into it. If you are single, female, and alone, you're in big trouble in a survival situation. Sure, there might be some white knight or community that will take you in, but if they don't, noting they are surviving, you become immensely vulnerable. The same is for children, for disabled, and for the elderly. No, I'm not saying this to offend you, I'm saying it as a matter of fact. And if you don't believe me, don't look at the last 50 to 60 years of history. Look at the last 10,000 years of history. Those who are immensely vulnerable need the protection of strong, capable, powerful men. Yes, I realize that's confronting. Welcome to the world of survival. The luxuries we have in a first world society, where the claim of, I don't need no man, the reality is, you don't need no man because you've had billions of men before you to create this global safe space. When all of that collapses, you're on your own. And that's when you absolutely need good, strong, capable men around you. And if you think, well, now I've got 20 to 30 women around me, I'm sorry, I realize this is confronting. This is a survival video. You just become a bigger target. Yes, you can coordinate. Yes, you can work together. And yes, you have a multiplying effect. But ultimately, survival does not care about any of that. And we'll talk about it a bit later. If you are a vulnerable person, and by law, we recognize women, children, the elderly and disabled as vulnerable people, because under law, we understand that in a first world, second world, third world, or survival situation, or fighting for your life, those people are at the greatest danger. My sisters, start building your alliances. Now, to counter my argument, just because you're a man doesn't mean you're protected. It in fact means that you become a target as well. Need proof? Look at what happens when nations dominate another nation or tribes or religions. The first thing they do is they go into the village, they gather up all the men and boys, they take them off and they execute them. Why do you think they do that? They don't do it because they're sexist. They do it because they realize the greatest threat to them is the men and boys, and that's why they terminate them immediately. And once those men and boys are gone, the girls are free game. I realize this is confronting. Deal with it. Rule 4. Agility and mobility is key. We spoke about this before. Many preppers believe that they can build a fortress at home and everything's going to be okay. If you're lucky, that is true. In reality, that rarely happens. And if you look at the best preppers or soldiers, the truth is agility and mobility is the key to success. On the battlefront, we've seen mobile weapon systems have catastrophic effects on the enemy, whereas fixed weapon systems are an easy target. The same is in survival. In the olden days, we used to build castles with moats around them. We then realized that they just become really big targets. Sure, they're strong and they can hold off an initial attack, but in the long term, if you're trapped in one central spot and you can't get more resources, you're going to start to hurt. Concurrently, if a fire, flood, cyclone or attack comes in, you need to be able to move. If you can't move, you become a big target. Staying still is a luxury, an absolute luxury. But if you go back through history, you start to realize some of the most successful tribes were nomads. They weren't staying in one spot, they were moving around. The world that we live in now, where we can stay in one house, with one shop down the road, with one workplace near us, that is an absolute luxury, an absolute first world luxury. But it's the mobility and agility of the supply chains in the background that makes this privileged life that you've become accustomed to possible. All the food in the supermarket down the road, that doesn't just magically appear. It happens through the agility and mobility of the logistical supply chains in the background. All the way from planting a seed in the ground to having it on your plate in your home. There were countless components from that seed growing on someone's property to coming out of your oven or home delivered by Uber Eats so you can enjoy it. Agility and mobility is key to survival in an extreme situation or even in a first world luxurious life that we've been enjoying. Just because you don't see it today doesn't mean it's not happening in the background. It is happening, and if you need to bug out and you don't have a bug out bag or a vehicle or fuel or comms or the ability to pick up and move, and a fire comes through or a flood comes through or a cyclone comes through, or worst case, a mob comes through to hurt you and your family, you're in a world of hurt. Which leads us to Rule 5. No one is coming to save you. In 2003, there were horrific bushfires that went through the capital. The same has happened in Victoria, Queensland, pretty much anywhere in Australia, and other countries with a lot of bushland and extreme heat. Fires, as an example, are devastating. And there's a horrific belief by so many that there's enough fire trucks and policemen and paramedics to come and save you. There's not. And that's okay. There can't be. If you wanted a fire truck for every house or even every street, there would be no money left in society because that costs a lot of money to raise and sustain. Therefore, in massive natural disasters, no one's coming to save you. The power goes out, the water pressure drops, the police are nowhere to be seen, and you are on your own. This is what I personally experienced in the 2003 bushfires that decimated the city in which I live. Absolutely decimated it. Saw it with my own eyes. The sky went black at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and when I say black, I don't mean like a nighttime black. I mean no stars, no street lights, no moon, pitch black. There was nothing but blackness everywhere. There's not enough grid operators to magically reinstate the power immediately. There's not enough police, fire, and ambulance operators to come and save you. Therefore, looking back at the previous rules, if you haven't made some type of plan, if you cannot move, if you don't have an alliance, you are going to be in a world of hurt because no one is coming to help you. No one is coming to save you unless you have a good community that you have built up. But stop relying on governments to save you. They can't. And this doesn't matter which side of government you vote for. This is absolutely a matter of fact. Left, right, up, down, in the middle, there are not enough operators to save you. And when things get violent, it becomes even more extreme. There aren't enough bodyguards to protect you. There aren't enough police to protect you. And guess what? They're looking after their families as well. Because in a true survival situation, humans will in fact go to what's most important to them. Their family, themselves, their property, their pets. Just as you would prioritize your family, many, not all, but many emergency service operators in an Armageddon survival situation, they're looking after themselves and their families. And you know what? I've got no issue with that. Why? Because they're people too. Rule 5 of survival. No one is coming to save you. Now we get into the confronting issues. In survival, Rule 6 tells us there is no social justice. All the luxurious social justice topics you've been debating in the last 2 decades, sure, they might be important to you in your first world privilege paradigm, irrespective of your gender, colour, language or background. In survival, none of that matters. Survival does not care about your hair colour, your sexual preference, your gender identification, your belief in what beauty is, your gender recognition demands, a mystery pay gap, a Me Too movement, a family court, a civil court, any court. In survival, all of that is gone. Deal with it. I am not saying this to upset you. I'm saying this to prepare you. All the paradigms that you have focused on at the moment, with all of what I've just described, they disappear. Don't believe me? Go back to nature. If you don't want to look at how the natural world operates, where trees don't care about which tree is getting more light or less light, or animals don't care about how another one identifies, in nature, survival is blind to all of that. And in your urban survival, in a situation where you're facing a challenge between life and death, all the social justice, luxurious crap that you've been fighting for over the last 2 to 5 decades, it's all gone. It means nothing. Your social science degree, your gender studies diploma, your bachelor in arts, your cry for the environment, all of it is gone. All of those topics are an absolute luxury of a first world. Yes, arguably important and valid in the world of which we live in today, but not in a world of urban or rural survival. All of that is out the window, and if you try to hold on to it, I wish you luck. Which leads us to a confronting rule, but a rule of the reality of survival. Rule 7. The weak are liabilities. In a modern world, we look after the weak. It's a sign of both our human decency and the advancement of humanity. Morally, physically, socially, looking after the weak and vulnerable is an absolute testament to what we have achieved as humans. In survival, all of that goes out the window. Yes, you may have a loved one that you will die for, but go back to basic first aid. Doctors A, B, C, D. The D in that acronym is danger. If you see someone who's hurt or unconscious, and you see a live power line next to them as an example, there's no point of you rushing in, hitting that power line and you dying to save someone who's also dying or dead. When we go on to survival, if you want to survive, there will sometimes be some very tough decisions to make. I want you to think about a herd of migrating elephants, immensely intelligent creatures who will put up immense protection for their calves. But the truth is, when they are migrating and they are in a survival situation, they will abandon the weak to ensure the rest survive. It is very confronting when you see this. Someone weak left behind to die. But the truth is, sometimes that has to be done. If you want to survive, that may be the choice you or your tribe or your alliance or your community has to make. Sure, you might like to die on the sword to save a damsel or child in distress. That's your personal choice. But if both of you die, what was the point? And more importantly, if that person's weak and vulnerable, and the strong alpha or sigma dies in the process of trying to save that person who can't protect themselves, then they're dead anyway. I realize this is confronting. This is why I talk to you about remaining fit, remaining able to move, remaining strong. Being obese is a disgusting luxury. In the olden days, if you were obese and you had to move, you would be left behind. But the reality is, you wouldn't have been obese because there wouldn't have been that many resources for you to enjoy. Obesity is a luxury. And as confronting as it may sound, looking after the disabled, the weak, the elderly, and the vulnerable is also a luxury. A wonderful luxury that we should all be absolutely proud of achieving in a modern society. But in survival, you don't have that luxury. And if you are the weak and you are the vulnerable, maybe you need to be the one who has the integrity and honor to sacrifice yourself for the better of the others. Very confronting, I realize. But in survival, moving on to rule 8, survival does not care about your feelings. You have no rights. You have no voice. It is survival. Deal with it. Anything that has triggered you during this video, you can abuse me all you like, but survival is blind to your comments, your thoughts, your abuse of me, your hate of reality, or your overall feelings. Just as survival doesn't care about the baby calf that's left behind with the migrating elephants, irrespective of the pain that the mother feels, perceived or actual, survival doesn't care. Because just like maths and the rules of the universe, survival is blind. Absolutely blind, and anything you think or feel with respect to your rights, your privileges, your beliefs, your religion, none of it matters. It's all gone. In survival, the universe or your adversary or your community, they don't care about your feelings. Accept that, and you're putting yourself in a good position to survive moving forward. So those are the 8 rules of survival. 1. Do what's hard when it's easy. 2. Failing to plan is planning to fail. 3. Alliances dominate. 4. Agility and mobility is key. 5. No one is coming to save you. 6. There is no social justice in survival. 7. The weak are liabilities. And rule 8. No one cares about your feelings. Those are the 8 rules of survival. In the next episode, I'll actually be talking about the application of survival. If you have any questions, comments, or want to vent your concern with what I said, leave them in the comments below. I'm happy to read them. For now, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. But more importantly, I want you to discuss these 8 rules with yourself through thought experiments, your family, your neighbors, your friends, your community, to understand if you face survival in an urban or rural scenario, these rules apply, whether you like it or not. The next video, we talk about the first application in a survival situation, and that is the application of protection. I'm Adam Stokes. Thanks for listening, safe surviving, and I'll talk to you next time.